Anytime you're ready.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is going to be the City of Arlington Planning Commission meeting design review for Tuesday, March 16th, 2021. Excuse me, if we could all stand and please recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
which it stands,
one nation,
one nation under
yeah, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
for all.
all.
Thank you, Lon. If you could call roll call, please.
Tim Dean.
Here.
Bruce Angell.
Here.
Mike Thomas.
Here,
Dan Berg.
Here.
Yvonne Van Ornum.
Here.
All present.
Right, thank you. Next would be the approval of the agenda. So Chair requests a motion for approval of agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
A
I'll
second.
second.
Thank you. Any discussion on this? No? Thank you. So then all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed, so it's unanimous. Thank you. The first item on our agenda today would be approval of the consent agenda, which is going to be minutes of February 18th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting and March 2nd, 2021 Planning Commission workshop. Chair requests a motion for consent of or approval of the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mike. Any discussion on this consent agenda? Nope. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Okay, thank you very much. Second item we'll be looking at is going to be in design review, which is going to be the Planning Commission acting as design review board. Item number 1, which is going to be the Public Utility District Community Office PLN number 816.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant, Snohomish County PUD, is seeking design review approval for their new regional community office building and associated structures that will help provide better utility service in the area. The proposed community office building will be located at 17601 59th Avenue, adjacent to the recently developed Clean Energy Tech Center, as well as microgrid. It is being proposed as a phased development. This is design review submittals for the 2-story building, associated warehouse building, loading docks, covered parking, and heated storage building. Based off of the design review application that was submitted on December 8th, as well as the items that were submitted on December 8th and February 22nd, 2021. Staff has reviewed the draft findings and provided these conditions. Provide indirect light to the sidewalk below, lighting elements in street environment like trees, walkways, canopies, and entryways. Provide pedestrian scale lighting with 10 to 12 foot pole heights throughout residential and shopping street parking areas. Bollard lighting bollards at 3 to 4 heights to illuminate paths and walkways. Exterior lighting shall be integral to the architecture and landscape design of any project. Located in AIM parking lots and other site lighting so that it does not cause glare or the light patterns in the properties. Provide clear and well-lit paths from parking areas to the street and building entrance, and highlight the entryway with pedestrian scale lighting and distinctive elements and details. Based off of that, staff is recommending the design review board approve with conditions the design review application for Snohomish PUD Community Office PLN 816.
Thank you, Josh. I do know that at our last workshop, that there were a couple of commissioners that weren't present, which is okay. I just wanted to know if those commissioners had any questions or comments before we proceed.
I did not. I went through the minutes and looked at that.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Any further discussion on this? All right, Chair requests a motion for approval with conditions.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the design review for PUD Community Office PLN A16 with condition. That we recommend approval by, that we approve it.
I'll second.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate that. Any discussion on that before we proceed? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed. Thank you very much. So the next item on our agenda would be new business, and that would be number one would be the housing action plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the housing action plan will be given a presentation, our consultant, Blue Line. So the presenters tonight will be Chase Killebrew and Leanne Ryan. And so they're going to give a little PowerPoint presentation to explain the housing action plan. And then Chase, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Do you want to answer questions through this, or do you want to get through your presentation and answer questions at the end?
Answer questions at the end, please.
Okay. All right. So you are good to start, Chase.
Okay. Is it okay if I share my screen? I have a PowerPoint.
Yep. I
Okay.
can do that right now. Just give me a second.
Okay.
Should be able to share now.
All right. Let's see. Okay, cool. All right. All right, so yeah, my name is Chase Killebrew. I'm a planner with Blue Line. Tonight, Leanne, Ryan, and I will be presenting the Arlington Housing Action Plan to you guys. So first, we would like to talk about House Bill 1923 and how it led to the writing of the Housing Action Plan. House Bill 1923 was passed in 2019, and it was passed to encourage cities in Washington to increase residential building capacity and regulatory streamlining. And it also encourages cities to consider the risk of displacement that can be caused by excessive growth. House Bill 1923 allocated $5 million in grants assistance, and cities could receive either up to $50,000 or $100,000, depending on their population size, with 20,000 people being a threshold number. So to receive the funds, cities had to commit to implementing at least two of the eligible actions from menu of 12, or they could develop a housing action plan. So in the fall of 2019, at the direction of Mark, we applied for funding on the city's behalf, and the city received $50,000 from the Washington Department of Commerce to write the housing action plan. The grant is performance-based, and the city must adopt the housing action plan by June 15th of this year to receive the full award amount. So what is a housing action plan and what is its purpose? Well, before I get to that, I'm going to describe the housing needs assessment and just give a brief overview of that. So the housing needs assessment is a fundamental element of the housing action plan. It's an informational document that helps the city answer some of the following questions. You know, who lives and works here and what are their socioeconomic characteristics? What types of housing are available? Are there any groups of people who are not able to find housing that is safe, affordable, and meets their household needs? You know, how much housing and what types of housing are needed to meet current and future housing needs? So in early 2020, last year, Leanne and I developed Arlington's housing needs assessment. It's a data-heavy document, and we had to tap into, you know, various sources such as the American Community Survey, the Decennial Census, the Washington State Office of Financial Management. And after compiling all that data, we analyzed it and created the 50-page housing needs assessment. We won't spend a lot of time going over all the findings this evening, but I hope you've all gotten a chance to review it by now. It's in the appendix of the Housing Action Plan. And as I said, it's a fundamental element of the Housing Action Plan. It's really meant to be a major driver of the overall focus on the plan. And it also serves as a snapshot and a baseline of the city's housing needs prior to the implementation of any of the actions outlined in the Housing Action Plan. So now, what is a Housing Action Plan? So Housing Action Plan is meant to define strategies and actions that promote greater housing diversity, affordability, and access to opportunity for residents at all income levels. So it's supposed to be a guidance document. A Housing Action Plan is not a policy document, and it does not in itself enact changes. Rather, it is meant to make suggestions and identify changes to be made at a later date. This means that the City Council's adoption of the Housing Action Plan is not a legal commitment to the strategies and actions outlined in the document. Instead, the value of a Housing Action Plan lies in its ability to focus attention and promote accountability for enacting change to meet the city's housing needs as they evolve. So another benefit of the Housing Action Plan is its ability to inform the city's comprehensive plan. With the Growth Management Act required comprehensive plan updates, comes a requirement to update the housing element of the comp plan. So the Housing Action Plan can be used to inform the goals and policies of the housing element, and it can even inform the capital, facilities, and land use elements as well. So what are the components of a Housing Action Plan document? The Housing Action Plan document is split into three main sections. You have the strategic objectives, and then accompanying actions. Then there's the implementation plan, and followed by the monitoring program. So the strategic objectives and actions occupy the majority of the document, and they really define the strategic objectives, define the broad problems that the Housing Action Plan is aimed at solving. Then the strategies are the individual actions, such as regulatory policies, tools, or programs that the cities can take to help achieve the strategic objectives. And please keep in mind that the specifics included in each action are ideas and suggestions. Yes, they have been proposed because of findings from the housing needs assessment, as well as feedback received during the housing needs survey, but it is beyond the scope of the Housing Action Plan to determine each action's full financial feasibility and potential effectiveness. So the implementation plan is meant to provide a roadmap for taking the recommended actions in the Housing Action Plan and turning them into enacted regulatory and program changes. And then the monitoring program provides a system for measuring the success of the actions in achieving the strategic objectives. So now that I've given an introduction to what a Housing Action Plan is and its purpose, we can get into the specifics of the Housing Action Plan document, which you guys have seen in your packets. So we'll provide an overview of the strategic objectives and the associated actions, the implementation plan, and then the monitoring program. So the three strategic objectives of the Arlington Housing Action Plan are: 1, expand opportunities for households to work, live, and play locally; 2, preserve community and character; and 3, address the housing needs of everyone. And now I'm going to discuss strategic objective number 1, which is, again, to expand opportunities for households to work, live, and play locally. So this first strategic objective draws on Arlington's strength as an employment center and focuses on expanding home ownership opportunities and increasing the quality of life for the residents of Arlington in the low to moderate income range. This strategic objective and associated actions are generally listed in the order of priority. So since this is strategic objective number 1, this is one of Arlington's highest priorities. The lack of affordable housing options, particularly for affordable options to own, is supported by the feedback we got in the housing needs survey. So a goal of this objective is to connect those interested in home ownership with more resource sources and potentially give developers more options to meet the demand. A specific action of this strategic objective is to explore the potential of the East Hill Master Plan neighborhood to offer affordable housing options. Again, in particular, those affordable ownership options. Another goal of this strategic objective is to more efficiently combine residential development with commercial and industrial investment, as well as with infrastructure and expansion, such as traffic and public transportation improvements. This is to create a more walkable, more accessible, less automobile reliant city, since transportation costs are an important factor to consider when judging a city's overall affordability. And now Leanne's going to provide an overview of the second and third strategic objectives.
So strategic objective 2 is to preserve community and character. The actions in this objective focus on preserving and enhancing Arlington's unique sense of place, as well as lowering the risk of displacement of citizens whose presence contribute to Arlington's sense of community. The city's current MXD regulations use a form-based approach to achieve the community's vision for how private development should appear. With the regulations being fairly new, the city can monitor their success and revise or expand the regulations to other areas such as Old Town, an area that's clearly critical to Arlington's identity, as we saw in the community survey results. And then the strategic objective also seeks to identify ways to help minimize displacement for long-term residents of Arlington. This includes resources that help increase the livability of residential units at risk of falling into disrepair, and financial assistance for residents living in areas undergoing redevelopment who are at a higher risk for displacement, such as seniors on fixed incomes. The objective also addresses the need to protect the city's existing affordable housing stock by tracking when programs are set to expire and where market conditions are changing. And then strategic objective 3 is to address the housing needs of everyone. The actions in this objective focus on ways to create more affordable housing through several methods. A lot of these methods could include taking stock of publicly owned land or partner-owned land and evaluating its appropriateness for siting public housing facilities. It also encourages the city to leverage affordable housing development by the private sector. So using incentives like found in the existing MXD regulations. Those methods can include density and building height bonuses, parking reductions, or waived permit fees. Anything that can really help offset the cost of including the affordable units in developments. And then the objective also supplies the city with a list of resources for grant funding opportunities related to innovative solutions to housing homeless populations, especially as we're in the midst of dealing with the economic fallout of COVID-19. Increased homeless populations are a reality that many cities are facing, so it'll be really important for Arlington to kind of keep those resources in the back pocket. And then I think we're going to talk about the monitoring program, or the implementation. Yeah. Now I'll just briefly kind of talk about the implementation and monitoring program. The implementation plan is meant to provide, as Chase said, is meant to provide a roadmap to take the recommended actions and turn them into policy and programmatic changes over time. It's organized by a strategic objective and underlying actions. So then each action contains steps to achieve the action, a suggested timeline for the action to be implemented either in the near term, medium term, or long term. The methods of implementation, whether it's administrative, legislative, or would it require partnership with community organizations. So who the department lead at the city would be. So who would sort of champion the project within the city, and then what other departments or local bodies could potentially assist in the action. And then the monitoring program is meant to help measure the plan's effectiveness in achieving its goals. So each action contains specific performance indicators. And those indicators should be kind of assessed regularly. I think, Chase, do you have anything left?
No, that's it. So yeah, if we want to turn it back over to Mark or turn it over for questions.
So Planning Commission, do you have any questions for the consultants?
Mr. Chair, I have a few. This is such a complex subject, it's a little hard for me to adequately frame these questions, but I'm going to try anyway. The plan seems to fall into the objective seems to fall into two broad categories for me. Category one are the things that we're pretty much already doing, which includes the mixed-use development, the implementation of form-based code, looking at East Hill, which we've been doing. We have a new piece of property coming in, the Lindsay Annex. And we're looking at both those two in terms of a planned neighborhood. So those things we're already kind of doing. Some of the other items mentioned in the strategic objectives appear to be very difficult to do for a community of our size. One thing that I'd like to mention is that both in the housing needs assessment and in strategic objective 1, you talk about transportation costs cannot be left out of the city's discussion of Arlington's affordability. What sources of information and how would that be structured as informing the development of our comp plan update?
So I'm sorry, I guess, so I'm trying to understand what your particular question is. It's basically how did the transportation costs play into the comprehensive plan update?
Not so much that. It's information availability and structuring a program that would combine the transportation and housing element to address that very issue. How would you proceed with that?
So
maybe out of the scope of this study, but
yeah, I mean, I think again, I feel like I don't understand your question completely, but what I would say, what I was kind of saying earlier in the presentation was, you know, this housing action plan can definitely help as you're going to prepare your comprehensive plan update. It can help inform it, and it's really, that's one of the primary drivers of this whole process and why the state passed this bill in the first place. Because, you know, like the housing crisis is a statewide thing. And so they wanted to get this bill passed, and get the grant money out there for cities to prepare these kinds of plans. Because in the past, you know, the comprehensive plans like housing element, although it's been very important, it just hasn't been sufficient and truly addressing the housing needs of the state. And so again, this is kind of like the first step of when the city is going to go and actually update the housing element, and it should really be utilized in that manner.
I think what the commissioner's looking for, Chase, is do you have any strategies that you've seen or utilized in order to, take for instance, changing level of services so that your mitigation monies are diverted into things like multimodal as opposed to it being just a system improvement, but you spread it out over a larger array of elements within your transportation system to cause effect onto the cost of transportation?
Yeah, I mean, that I would say that's definitely something that would be a recommendation, or kind of, you know, is something that I feel like the plan kind of touches on. But I mean, as you know, like a very specific recommendation of how that could be achieved is, you know, was outside of the scope of the housing action plan itself.
Okay, any further
that
questions?
answered it, yeah.
Bruce, did you have
Well-
anything further?
I'm sorry, what?
Did you have anything further?
No, that's good.
Okay, sounds like, Mike, you might have a question or comment?
Oh, yeah, well, now I just lost my train of thought. Completely went blank. I'm writing notes here too, but this is generally just for a guidelines. It's not going to be like a mandate or laws. Is that correct? An assumption?
Yes, yeah, that's correct. Like I was saying, it's not a policy document. And I think sometimes people can get confused and think that this has the same weight as as the comprehensive plan, but that's not the intent of this. It's more to guide something like, the comprehensive plan.
It will be a reference document though, Mike.
Yeah. Well, it's just funny. Like in action 1.2, it says, build a wider range of housing options and varieties. And then on the bottom, it says, go with stock designs that would eliminate the designer and expedite the permits. So that's just like contradictory to itself, in my opinion. But I can see where, I didn't fill in all the blanks, but if you just read that part of it, it just doesn't seem, quite right. But that's what they do anyway, so that's the way it already is a lot of times. So.
Right. I think I guess what I'm hearing. Yeah. So I mean that's what that action is all about. It's about expanding the types of residential units you can build, in terms of like duplexes and fourplexes and stuff. It's not necessarily about like, the models or, how they look in particular. It's about just making sure that there's a diversity of options so that there's a diversity of cost for housing.
Yeah. I just thought it seemed kind of funny reading it that way. So, but I know what the intent is.
Gotcha.
Okay.
But there's a lot to take in this. You can just read it over and over and over, and it just keeps amazing amount of information. I'll put it that way.
So Chase,
I'm through.
Thank you, Mike. I had a question as well. I mean, maybe more of an observation. So this is like a living document. I mean, this doesn't necessarily mean that what we see today is what we might see in, let's say, 5 years or a year. After we see some monitoring done and of the program and some assessments have been delivered, that there could be some changes done to this document as well, and we could, augment the plan. Is that what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that's part of the intent of what this document could do, and especially with the implementation plan and monitoring program like really being carried out. If you were to try to see how these actions are implemented over time and really measure them and then update the plan accordingly, I mean that would be the best way to probably utilize this plan.
Okay, and then on the monitoring piece of it, by whom is it monitored, and who do you or to who do they send the information to?
So I mean that's something that we had written into the plan. It kind of, I know it's a little brief about, but it basically just puts it into Mark's department and the community development department, and then they would be the ones that would be updating it. But I mean, if that's not something that Mark wants to take on, then that's okay. That's just like what we wrote in there, and as kind of like this draft and what we thought it would probably be the best, since again this housing planning all kind of goes, and the housing element planning all kind of goes together and is tied together. So
perfect, thank you. That's all I have.
Chase, I have a question before you're gone. So have you worked with any jurisdictions that use the value capture tool?
No, I have not. Yeah, that's one that like I see like it seems like it could be very useful, but I can't think of a particular jurisdiction that I've seen use it and that I've worked with. That was more just one that when I was looking through what other cities have implemented, or like talked about potentially implementing, that was something that they suggested, and it seemed like a good idea. Particularly, I think I found that one in Tacoma's strategy that they've written in the past, and I'm not sure if they've actually gone about implementing that yet.
What is that?
The value capturing.
Yes.
So it's really, I mean, I'm not going to be able to explain it super well, but it's really about just trying to capture the increased investment in an area. Obviously, like I think in the plan, I talk about, the industrial center that you guys have there in Arlington, and trying to basically take that and then reinvest in the community and public infrastructure improvements, and maybe even, I think there's even potential to, kind of turn it into affordable housing if needed. So it's really just trying to make sure that, that increased investment is spread out and can be beneficial to the public at large.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Jan,
Yeah.
I have some information on tax incremental financing. And so that's really what this is about. Tax incremental financing is not something that's being done in Washington currently, but they are looking at trying to put it into place through the legislature. So I can send you that information so it'll explain how the program works though.
Okay, no, I understand. Okay, no, that makes sense now. I understand the tax increment financing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you.
This is a way to get around that since it's nothing that's being
Available.
done currently legally. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
A pretty,
Don't understand that. So is there a way for us to, like, can you just get sent out anyway?
Yeah, I can send the information out.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. Is that okay? When you were talking about the unique sense of place, it just seems very broad. So where is that in this plan, and what the survey results of what did you get back as what do people see as our unique place and our unique characteristics and our sense of community? Like, what are they defining that as?
we got a lot of feedback on wanting to see Old Town kind of preserved as it is in the Old Town residential neighborhoods. And that's kind of how people identified, or a lot of people who participated in the survey at least, identified as Arlington's kind of like unique sense of place, that kind of Main Street area, that smaller town feel. That was definitely a lot of feedback we got in the survey results.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question probably for Mark.
Yes.
Regarding the implementation plan and the different strategic objectives. How are you or city council staff going to decide which ones to try to implement first? I know, Commissioner said that we were already looking at some of these, but I'm like a little concerned about like the stronger tenant rights and that type of thing.
So we'll start to work on that about which ones we think will be successful, low hanging fruit first. As we start to work on our comprehensive plan update, we'll start to look at which ones we want to utilize as part of our comp plan strategies. And so we'll have that discussion as we work our way through that, the comp plan rewrite. So everybody will have their fair share of input to that.
A lot of them look like they have dollars attached to them as well. So I'm sure they'll be part of a budget discussion.
Yeah, that's why I say the low hanging fruit first.
Sure.
Because it's easy to show some success and then try to build and garner support in order to look at budgeting for other programs.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
When some of the surveys I've seen, Jan, when you're talking about maintaining that Arlington feel, some of it is sticks and bricks But a lot of it is about the people and the kind of environment that we create in terms of the look and the feel and what kind of places we're creating. In addition to what we already have as a central place, downtown Arlington and Old Town, residential is what kind of neighborhoods are we creating along the Smoky Point corridor, for instance?
Right, and we are addressing currently the Old Town design in the neighborhood. So we're going out for selection for consultant for the Old Town design standards. So that will keep the architectural styling of infill within the Old Town residential districts. So that is addressing that, keeping that sense of place alive.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so staff has asked us to take action on this evening. So what we would be doing is recommending to now send this to City Council with our approval or disapproval. So at this time, Chair requests a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the Housing Action Plan. I don't know how you want to word it, as a guide for further study, development of the comprehensive plan as a
reference document to the comprehensive plan, yes.
Can you restate that?
Yeah, move that the Planning Commission recommend approval to Council of the Housing Action Plan as one planning document to inform development of the 2024 Comprehensive Plan update.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? None opposed. All right. I appreciate that. Thank you, Chase and Leanne. Appreciate you guys being here this evening. And looks to me like everybody pretty much, like I say, a very large document, a lot of information, but we appreciate all your hard work. So moving on, for our next item on the agenda would be public comment. So do we have anybody on our schedule for public comment this evening?
Do not.
We do not. Okay. So that being said, I guess Chair requests a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None? Before we leave, I just want to make another comment about backgrounds that Yvonne, your background was a little bit boring today, but that's okay. I
I
think Jan,
didn't feel it. I couldn't channel my inner Tim, so.
it looks like Jan wins the background contest for this week, so I appreciate it. But all right, everybody, thank you very much. Hope you have a pleasant evening.
Have a great night.
Thank you.